We're very excited today to welcome Christy Turlington here. We're going to get to see a little bit of the new film that's debuting this spring, as well as get some questions time for Christy. And I have a little bio here that's been prepared for her, so I'll just go ahead and read that. With more than 25 years at the forefront of the fashion industry, having graced every magazine from the cover of Vogue to Time, Christy Turlington has established a diverse career as a model, writer, entrepreneur, spokesperson, advocate, and now filmmaker. Philanthropy and service has been a long part of Christy's personal and professional mission to make a lasting impact on the world. In 2005, she began working with the international humanitarian organization CARE and has since become their advocate for maternal health. She has also been an ambassador for RED since their launch in 2006. Her work on behalf of CARE and RED inspired her to pursue a master's in public health at Columbia University's Mailman School, where she's currently enrolled. In 2008, Christy began work on a documentary film profiling the status of maternal health worldwide. In her gripping directorial debut, Christy shares the powerful stories of an at-risk pregnant woman in 4 different parts of the world, including a remote Maasai tribe in Tanzania, a slum in Bangladesh, a post-abortion care ward in Guatemala, and a prenatal clinic in the United States. No Woman, No Cry made its world premiere at the 2010 Tribeca Film Festival in New York City, with U.S. television broadcast premiering on May 7th, 2011, on the new Oprah Winfrey Network. Concurrent with the debut of her documentary, Christy launched Every Mother Counts, an advocacy and mobilization campaign to increase education and support for maternal and child health. Today, Christy joins us to talk about her documentary. I'm going to welcome Christy to tell us a little bit about the film to start. Thanks.
Thank you, Marisa. I'm thrilled to be here today to share this film. It's really been a labor of love and a very passionate issue for me for the last 3 years, but actually for the last 7.5 years, because you'll see at the beginning of the film this is an incredibly personal story as well. This is just the first part of it. It's just through Tanzania, but I do encourage you to see the film when it comes out on the 7th of May, and I hope you enjoy it, and I look forward to talking afterwards. Thank you.
It's beautifully told. So I guess I'd like to understand a little bit about how did you decide to make the movie?
Well, I had that experience at the beginning with Grace, and I learned about the statistics, the global statistics around maternal mortality. But it was really actually a couple years later, when I was pregnant with my second child, that I started to do a little bit of traveling with the humanitarian aid organization CARE. And one of the first places we visited was to El Salvador, which is where my mom is from. And I think I was about 6.5, 7 months pregnant. We visited a small community in a rural area where it was a water project, and because they were providing some water and some access to water for women who mostly do the water collection, they were using this opportunity to also educate, give some prenatal and postnatal care to some women in the area. And a lot of the women were in the same state of their pregnancies as I was, or had just had babies. And I think that was the moment where I sort of thought, oh, if I lived here and I had had my complication, I would be dead. No doubt about it. There was no running water, there was no electricity, there were no paved roads. I hadn't seen an ambulance or a hospital facility for miles getting out to that area. And that's when I had the moment of like, this is something that I think I can contribute to. And then about a year later, I traveled again to Peru, to an indigenous population in the highlands. And I saw a success story also with CARE and a partnership between CARE, Columbia University, and the local government, where they were able to reduce maternal deaths in half in less than 5 years. And I think seeing how they were able to do that and how low cost so many of the solutions were, that's what sort of floored me. And I thought, this is doable. These are hundreds of thousands of lives, but 90% of them are preventable. Why aren't we doing a better job? What can be done? And I'm not a filmmaker by training, but my husband's a filmmaker, and a lot of our friends are filmmakers. And I thought, this is a story these are stories that need to be told. And so I set out to make a movie and to pull any resource that I had together to be able to make this, to connect people like yourselves to the issue.
And how did you find the women, and how did you choose the locations? And I'm guessing that probably they're the 4 that are in the movie, but there probably were many more that you interacted with over that time.
There were countless women's stories we've collected. Well, I wanted to show that it was a global tragedy, so it was very important to me that we look at obviously where the highest burdens are, which is in sub-Saharan Africa, and I chose Tanzania for a few reasons. One, in that there's political will there. The president of Tanzania has been very vocal, and he's taken a real leadership role with regards to MDG 4 and 5, which are around infant mortality and maternal mortality. And so that is a big thing. And I wanted to find countries that were sort of primed for success. It's also one of the first countries I traveled to in Africa 21 years ago. And so I have friends there. I feel comfortable there and familiar there. So we chose it for that reason. And we picked northern Tanzania, where the roads are better, thinking that if we got to see that referral process from clinic to hospital, that we could do it oftentimes if we needed to. But as you could see with Janet, even though she didn't live so far away, I mean, it's still miles away from a road and miles away from the hospital that she had to go to. In Guatemala, we ended up, through Planned Parenthood, we found an obstetrician who was just so remarkable that we actually picked the country because of her. I wanted to look at a country that had a high indigenous population because those are women that are the most disenfranchised in a society. And so we picked it because it was surrounded by very, very conservative countries, and yet it was this little country where it had this one woman. She's like the sole Planned Parenthood provider in that country, and she was also 8 months pregnant herself. So she was just incredible. We picked Bangladesh. It's where the second highest burden is after sub-Saharan Africa, which is in Southeast Asia. There are a lot of incredible things happening in Bangladesh. It's a small country, and they have sort of family planning somewhat under control. A lot of women have controlled the amount of children that they have. However, they don't have their babies in facilities, and I think 90% of them choose to have a child at home, which is fine if you have a clean home and you have access to water and healthcare workers, but they often do it totally by themselves. So we wanted to examine what were the cultural barriers and some of the social norms that were preventing them from seeking care if it was in fact offered. And then the last being the US. I just thought it was so important. I live in the US, I had my children in the US. I think it's important because the audiences that I geared this film for live here, that we bring it close to home. And of course, as we were making the movie, we were going through this huge process in the States about healthcare reform, and still are. So it seemed really important to tie that piece into it and to weave it through. And for all of the countries that I've shown this film in, they're all the most shocked, actually, about the US. In the UK, they just couldn't believe that so many women are not provided for, particularly as pregnant people.
I think one of the interesting scenes in there, and I imagine it happened several times over making the movie, was when they asked you for help. And I wondered if you had sort of guidance in terms of how did you handle that? When did you intervene? When did you not intervene? I think it must have been really, you would definitely want to help, but sometimes then you're also changing the story that you're observing, and exactly. I think it's a difficult balance.
It was a difficult balance. I mean, we went in thinking we're going to be around some scenarios which they'll be precarious and they'll be dangerous, and we will help people get to the care that they need. But we did really want to understand what would happen if we weren't here. And so, while we were dealing with it, I mean, we were also filming several stories at the same time. So at the same time as Janet, Lightness had come in, the 16-year-old at the end, and we were filming her story very carefully too. So it was really hard to kind of know what was going to happen to anyone. And they both ended up having to go to get care at the hospital. But it was very challenging to know, like, what's the moment. So we had some of our crew, which was quite small, starting to work on providing transportation, going to go negotiate with the driver down the road to make sure that we could get transportation for her, even if we didn't go with her. And we ended up just deciding, you know what, we're just going to go with her. We're just going to see what happens. And thank goodness we were, because obviously every day, there's not a van full of Mazungu, as we're called, around to help.
And this is your first turn as a filmmaker. So what were some of the biggest surprises and challenges?
It was such an extraordinary experience. I mean, my producer is a friend who's a mom in my neighborhood in New York, and she's been a part of a lot of productions for documentaries, and she pulled together a team for me that were incredible. So I was really learning all the time. But we were a team of women. We worked with a local producer in each of the countries so that we would have somebody to speak the local dialect. And also they were filmmakers in their own right, so we tried to, provide some work opportunity as well for filmmakers in each of the countries. But I love to travel, and I love to be really embedded into a part of the world that we are. And in all of my travels through my career and just aside of my career, I haven't really been able to sort of indulge that part of like really being for 2 weeks at a time with a community of people and being led into their lives in some of the most intimate moments that women will ever have. So the fact that women allowed us in at that time, and again, we would introduce ourselves, explain what we were trying to do, always get permission, and treat women with dignity and respect at all times. But women started to seek us out. It was Janet was one of those people, I think she just saw this as an opportunity. I think these people can help me. So she kind of, as much as we found her, she also sought us out. And that happened in each of the countries in some way.
And do you think that you'll do more filmmaking in the future? Are there other films that you'd like to make?
I think I will, actually. I hadn't set out to. This story really, this issue really inspired me. But in editing the film, there were countless stories. We could have told so many stories because, maternal mortality is, I think, the red flag to a very large maternal health issue, which really boils down to equity. And so numerous times it was really like, this could be a movie about religion and reproductive health. This could be a movie about just rights and the lack of knowledge of human rights. There were so many different pieces to it. And so there are so many stories still to be told. And I think I will go and do them. I just have to see this one through. And I'm committed at least through 2015 with my advocacy strategy.
So tell us a little bit about the advocacy strategy. What do you expect to come out of this? What would you like to see happen? How can all of us help support the cause?
Well, as I was editing the movie also, you create like a social issue documentary to try to create real change. And I think the film is an amazing opportunity to be able to show stories about women in their own language and their own voices, like what their lives are like. However, at the end of a movie that moves you and hopefully inspires you in some way, you do want to know what can I do? So Every Mother Counts is a way to create some actionable, opportunities for people to be able to engage on a number of different levels. There are policy pieces of this that are clearly important because policy in the U.S. reflects the policy around the world, particularly with reproductive rights and contraception and family planning and those types of things. But also, just ways to feel like you've contributed in a meaningful way. And I feel that this is an issue that really touches everybody, men, women, families, because we've all come into the world through this process. It's truly a universal issue. If we haven't had children ourselves, our partners, our friends, our sisters, our friends have gone through this process, and I think we all know somebody who had some slight complication, some fearful moment in their pregnancy that I think we can identify with women like the ones that are presented in the film, and like the what if I'd been there or there, the randomness of it all. So I feel that it's something that each of us can do something. Each of us has our own set of resources that we can think of a way to do something, but sharing the stories, inviting people to see the film, to know more about the issue. Our website, everymothercounts.org, is set up to learn more and go to the next level. We've created some education modules that are free and downloadable from our site, and we're trying to have our site be a resource really to lead you to the things, the innovations that are in this area. There's some amazing high-tech, low-tech solutions to this issue, and trying to invite and identify the ones that we think are the most exciting and the most useful right now. But we would love any ideas you have. I think you all, in your specific area of expertise and interests, would have so much to contribute that I have no knowledge or skills. So I would love help and partnership in any way.
So changing gears from the film a little bit, I think that all of us are very interested because you've had one of the most multifaceted careers of anyone, certainly I've ever met. And I wanted to explore a little bit about each of those. And so I thought maybe we could start with your modeling days, a little bit about what they were like, how you got into the business in the first place. I think it's interesting for people to hear about all the different career shifts and experiences you've had.
Sure. Well, I grew up in the East Bay, actually. I was born in Walnut Creek. And I grew up in Danville, and I grew up riding horses. My sisters and we all rode and competed horseback riding. And my parents worked for Pan Am, and they were big travelers, and so we grew up sort of traveling a lot around the world. But we lived in Florida for a brief time because Pan Am was based there, and my dad was a training captain. And at that time is when I got sort of discovered, and it was through my horseback riding. Actually, a photographer saw my sister and I riding horses and asked our mom if he could take our picture, and I was like 14 with braces and everything, and my sister was like that would be cool. So we did it, and I became the tall one, and she didn't grow very tall, and so I had a career. But yeah, so I started working when I moved back here as a teenager in high school. I would take the BART bus, and take BART into the city, and I would work for the department stores and that kind of thing. And then I went to New York and sort of stayed there from there. I didn't want to come back after experience a little bit of independence and, in the travel. I was really hard to go back to the suburbs to to high school. But my mom pushed me to finish my high school degree, which was smart, because then I went back to school to NYU at 25 when I was kind of burnt out with my career. And I got a degree in comparative religion and Eastern philosophy. And, I started practicing yoga as a teenager, but I started to really practice very regularly at that time. And then started a couple of businesses after that. I started a skincare business. It was based on the principles of Ayurveda, a sister philosophy to yoga, and also an apparel line in partnership with Puma, which was also around yoga and lifestyle of yoga. And so I did that for a while. And I wrote a book about yoga called Living Yoga, Creating a Life Practice. And what else did I do?
And tell us a little bit about yoga. So how often do you practice it? For what duration? Do you like to do it in a group? Do you do it at home? Tell us a little bit about your yoga practice.
My yoga practice these days is really my advocacy. Seva is a big part of, it's one of the principles of yoga. And honestly, I wish I could practice more of the physical aspect of it, but I just don't have enough time in the day these days. I really view my service and the work that I do in this area as my yoga. And also the way that I mother my children is really my yoga. To me, it's really the way that I view the world and my perspective of the world. And I do consider it a life practice. So while I don't get to do as much physical yoga at the moment, I do whenever I can, whenever I have any downtime, whenever I am not traveling as much as I do, and I have the skills, so it's something that I can do wherever I am. I can meditate, I can sit for a practice, and even if it's a few minutes, it's integrated into my daily life. It's been the most meaningful life practice that I could have, and really what led me, I think, to the work that I'm doing today.
And you've also become a student at Columbia doing your master's. So tell us a little bit about that transition. So you obviously went back to school at 25 and are now back in school again. So do you get recognized? How is it?
It's funny. Even when I went to undergrad at NYU, I didn't get recognized that much. I think students were pretty much into their own thing, and I also, I don't know. I'm not a super glamorous person, so I don't think I really stood out that much, even though I was 8 years older than most of my classmates. Now I'm 20 years older than my classmates. No, maybe not that much, but I'm a lot older than most of my classmates. But I also feel that in grad school, at least, I feel like my professors are my peers. Like, those are the people that I work with mostly in this kind of work. So I feel kind of like I have an advantage. I feel lucky that anytime I get to be at the UN or really at the table with so many of the people that are really leaders in the maternal, newborn, child health sector, I feel like my classmates would be so jealous. And I've actually been able to employ a few of them. They've been helping us with some of the education modules, and I love the experience. I'm taking the slow track at the moment, so I'll be there another year or so, but I'm enjoying it immensely.
Very cool. So after this next question, we'll go ahead and open it up to the audience. So if you have a question for Christy, you can go here to the mic so people can hear. But the last question is changing gears to Google. Do you have a favorite Google product, and how do you use it?
Well, the ones that I use daily are, I constantly am in mapping. I'm a big map obsessed person, particularly when it's like global health. It's so convenient and so user friendly. So that is one of them. But then the other is, my alerts. I really could not keep on top of all of the things that are going on all the time in this space and with this issue. And so I really rely on it so heavily. And then I tweet like crazy about the different pieces of information that I get. So it's been really useful.
Very cool. Okay.
This is sort of two halves of the same question. One is, you said 90% of these deaths are preventable. What are some of the key remediations, the key things to fix? And the second one is, I just imagine that in many of these circumstances, isn't it really because of the power imbalance of, women do the work and, well, I don't know what the men do.
Well, the most important thing is really prevention. So the importance of family planning is tremendous. That ties into education. So education is also incredibly important. When a girl has more than a primary education, she will just instinctively delay a first pregnancy, marriage. She'll understand better to space pregnancies. That will save her life just by virtue of holding off starting a family. Secondly, and then obviously, having the ability to control your fertility is tremendously empowering and incredibly important. So many women who are pregnant and at, a ridiculous age, like 13 or 14 for the first time in much of sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia, they have not chosen to be pregnant. They've not chosen to have sex. So, education and working on that prevention piece and how to empower girls to protect their own bodies is a critical piece. But then the healthcare worker piece is also really important. We will never have enough doctors to fulfill the burden of most global health issues. And as you heard our obstetrician in Tanzania say, he was the only OB for 2.5 million people. Well, 2.5 million people were not seeking care from a doctor because they don't even think about seeing a doctor in their daily lives. But when a woman is pregnant, that's an opportunity for a woman to be seen for the first time. And there are tremendous things being done with not just community health workers, but midwives and nurses and mid-level providers. In Tanzania, the teenager that you see at the end, she had a C-section in the end, but by an AMO, which is the equivalent of a physician's assistant, and that's who's doing the majority of the cesarean sections in sub-Saharan Africa. And midwives are doing them too, actually. So I would say the skilled birth attendants, the prevention piece being the family planning and contraception, and education.
I wanted to thank you so much. I thought the film was great, and I really liked the tone of it. I had worked in Tanzania a bit before, and I liked sort of the just non-intrusive, narration. It just sort of felt like you were, letting the people there interact the way that you would observe it. I was curious about the diagnosis the nurse kept giving some of the patients about their pelvis bone. So is that linked to, is that a common thing? Is it linked to maybe being young, or is it something with the Maasai, or what was the issue there?
That's a good question. It is linked to being too young, but also malnutrition, and nutrition is a huge factor too. So these poor women, they tend to eat last even when they're pregnant. If they're very young, when they start having a baby, they don't develop properly. Even women that are older, you just see their stature is very tiny. And so that was a common, in the amount of time we were in that clinic, that was commonly the reason why women had to be referred. And what happens is if she's not developed enough and her pelvis is small, then she's a candidate for an obstructed labor, which in most scenarios ends up where the baby dies, but in many cases the woman will die also, and at the very least she'll suffer a complication, a morbidity, which could last her a lifetime, like an obstetric fistula, which is a horrible, horrible handicap that so many women have.
Okay. Well,
Thank you for the question.
And we also have a system where people are putting their questions on and voting. So we have a few of those. Some of these we already asked, but I'll go ahead and ask the first one, which is, how do you feel that your career as a fashion model has impacted your ability to be an advocate for women's reproductive health today?
That's a funny thing. I don't know that, I guess it has certainly helped in a sense, because I sometimes have an opportunity to get some media attention, but I don't think the job itself had any real effect on it. It's just that it allowed me to really travel and see the world a lot, and I think feel a little bit more connected to a lot of women outside of the community where I was raised and where I was brought up. So I guess the experience of being able to travel definitely had something to do with it. And then the fact that I do have some ability to be able to get some media attention. I think if I didn't have a deeper knowledge, I don't know that it would be that effective. But the fact that I have made the commitment to go deeper and to go back to school, I think will make me a more effective communicator, because it's one thing to communicate what you see and to tell stories and to go on trips and to have your picture taken someplace. But it's another thing to take it to the next level and to continue to go deeper and to, for me, I really want to be part of the solutions of this problem. I didn't want to just come and observe and walk away. I'm deeply committed to this, and I don't know if being a fashion model has anything to do with that.
Hi, I'm Jacqueline. Thanks a lot for taking on this issue, because it's been a really neglected issue and we really need people like you to champion it, so thank you. So a few of us also went with CARE on a maternal mortality learning trip last year, and we went to Sierra Leone. And one of the things that we learned when we were there is that there was one pediatrician for all of Sierra Leone. I mean, the country is just so decimated in terms of health resources. So obviously the answer to improving maternal mortality has a lot to do with increasing foreign assistance and development assistance. And I was just wondering, especially now, given the cutbacks and given the sort of climate of fear and holding on to our resources so tightly, how that's going, how you and Erin and are taking on this issue, and are you optimistic at all, and where do you think that's headed?
That's a good point. I mean, right now is an incredibly tough time, and the budgets are getting slashed on a daily basis here and for international aid. I think because we know the next couple of years are going to be rough, what we're hoping is some of the momentum that was built around maternal mortality and maternal health in the last year, it was on the agenda for the first time at the G8 last summer, that all of that and some of the attention that Bill and Melinda Gates have brought to it, and Sarah Brown, Gordon Brown's wife, I mean, some of those things have escalated the issue to now be, it's on the agenda. So our priority is keeping it a focus, so that we don't fall back. The idea is okay, we can't do a whole lot with aid right now, but we can sort of keep pushing along. And we believe that civil society hasn't really been a part of this dialogue yet, and we hope that the film and the exposure on something like the Oprah Winfrey Network and our partnership with Starbucks and the CD we've created, that those are ways to really bring in everyday citizens, moms, family members, to get to be a part of this, to participate. And I mean, we really envision us playing a big role, that we actually can be a part of helping to bridge some of that funding gap that exists now.
And we have a question about volunteering and being able to help. Are there things that people can do from here?
Yeah, we often get that question, and we're trying to really identify a few ways that people can have meaningful, results. And some of those are volunteering. They might not mean you have to leave this country. There are ways to be able to, create watch parties and host parties and to learn more, so that you can then, have a voice within your community and, create your own constituency around this issue and have your voice heard, because there are so many women and girls who do not have a voice. And so the main thing that you can do, that anyone could do, is to use your voice, because you have one. But the second thing is, I mean, we're trying to identify a few very easy ways, tangible ways, and we have identified a few organizations there you can donate phones that you don't use anymore, that you've discarded. We have ways that you can help support midwives and the education of midwives to get supplies into their hands, so that they are better able to do a job. We're going to have some of those ready for our launch on May 7th, and we do invite you to come back to the site and to look at it, because we'll give you some very specific ideas and ways you can do things.
In addition to being on the Oprah Winfrey Network, is it also going to be released more widely? How will people be able to see it? They'll be able to see it on May 7th? And
Yes. OWN will be our broadcast partner here, and then they have the digital and video rights. So it will be part of, she's going to have a documentary club, kind of like her book club, and we'll be a part of that. And then OWN will also broadcast it in Canada under another network called Chorus, who's going to be distributing OWN. And then we'll be doing also broadcast in France around their Mother's Day, which is at the end of May. And that's going to happen on Teva, which is a women's channel there. We've tried to identify in the G8 markets where they do celebrate Mother's Day, because Mother's Day is not an internationally celebrated event. But those are kind of key moments where it could be launched. And then we're continuing to travel with it. Global health conferences, I've been showing it for the last year since we launched at Tribeca, to really get it out there amongst the community.
how has making this film changed your view on motherhood?
Well, I think there's not a whole lot that I can complain about as a mom or as a working person. My mother will tell me all the time, like, oh, you're working so hard, you really have to slow down. And I said, you have no idea what hard work is until you go out in the world. So the stuff that I do, it's like the very least I can do, because I can do it, and I can choose to do the things that I do, and I can choose to donate my time and my energy to an issue like this. I think, the appreciation of having had the healthcare workers that I had that helped me in my own situation while delivering. I mean, I have tremendous respect, and did from day one, for midwives and for doctors and for nurses, because they really are, the unsung heroes around the world. And I truly believe that. And I think for my children, I'm the best example I can be as a human being for them. Like, that's my first priority. And I think by the stuff that I'm interested in, the things that I'm sort of pursuing, they're seeing that, and they're getting exposed to the world and the issues, the real issues that I think really matter at at a really young age. I think that's like an invaluable thing that I can give them. And I can't wait to be able to share more of the world with them and have them help me. I can't wait to be side by side with my daughter working on these issues. So she's 7.5 now. I figure I'll give her another couple years and then drag her on the road with me.
Okay, well, I guess we will have Christy here to take more questions if you guys want to come up and meet her and ask more questions in person. But I want to thank you so much for coming today and sharing the film with us and a bit of your story. It's
Thank
really
you so
great.
much.